I hate the phone. Not my phone, the device. I have this iPhone. I'm actually using it right now to record this. It does many useful things. It's recording this video. It allows me to listen to music, allows me to listen to podcasts wherever, or audiobooks. That's so cool. There's a bunch of other cool things it does. It has a stopwatch on it, a timer. I use those things. It's a very useful device, but I hate the phone part of it. Not just the phone, but the texting also. And it's not the people on the other end that I have a problem with at all. In fact, I love the people on the other end. The problem I have with it is the constant distraction, the constant interruptions. I think it's crazy that we've grown to this point in our society where we are all expected to have this thing in our pockets that is liable to interrupt us at any moment with any amount of frequency for any reason at all times. That's kind of like what we're expected. And I know that we're expected to have that. And I can tell how deep this expectation goes when I start to talk to people about how I'm about to make this commitment to not using my phone at all. The reaction I get when I say that to people is crazy. They think I'm crazy, first of all. They respond with things like, you can't do that. You can't just not use your phone. You know, like it's just not an option. Like that's not something that one can do. Like when I say this to people, it universally almost it's responded to like that. People react almost as if I'm saying something like, I'm gonna try to go without sleeping. As if, you know, not only is it not really a possible thing to do, but it's kind of tacitly treated as though it's not good for you either. Like it couldn't possibly be a good thing to do. Which is funny because there's just a massive amount of evidence to the contrary. I mean, it's not even controversial to say that, you know, the phone and the constant distraction of it and the constant, you know, fragmenting of one's attention is really not good for us as a society and as individuals either. I was reading about flow states recently. There's this guy, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is his name. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a Hungarian-American psychologist. And he spent like 40 or 50 years of his life studying the flow state. Now, a flow state is something that everybody has probably experienced at some point in their life where you're doing something that is meaningful to you and you're fully immersed in it. Your sense of time falls away, your sense of ego evaporates, your attention is just totally dialed and laser focused, but at the same time it feels completely effortless. Now, in all his research, Mihai kind of discovered that, you know, whether you realize it or not, getting into these states of flow is remarkably good for us as human beings. He went as far as to say that it's actually a pretty essential part of living a good, fulfilled life. It's an essential part of feeling competent in our lives, and it's remarkably good for just mental health and well-being. He was interested in how we get into these flow states and maintain them, and 3 things that he came up with is to get into a state of flow, you want to choose one thing, right? Keep it a singular focus. You want it to be something that is meaningful to you, and you want to engage in it at the level where it's at just at the edge of your ability. If you're engaging in the activity and it's too easy, you might space out and get bored, and that will prevent you from getting into a flow state with it. If it's too difficult, then you may get discouraged, and that would prevent you from getting into a flow state. So you want it to be right at the edge of your ability. But the one thing that he found that absolutely consistently eliminated a flow state was distraction. Being distracted just eliminates the possibility of ever getting really into a flow state or staying in a flow state. Here's another point that kind of builds on that. We often imagine that we have the ability to multitask, but according to Earl Miller, who's a leading neuroscientist at MIT, the human brain can actually only think consciously about one thing at a time. It's a single core processor. It cannot multitask. So when we are feeling like we are multitasking, what we're actually doing is what's called switching. We're switching between tasks. And there are plenty of studies that show that switching constantly has a detrimental effect on several things. First of all, it massively increases your error rate. So if you're doing something and you're kind of switching between multiple things or being distracted constantly, your mistakes that you're making on whatever you're doing massively increases. It also massively affects your ability to remember things accurately. We can't remember what actually happened when we are constantly being distracted. We have a fragmented understanding of our own experiences. Constant switching also has a detrimental effect on creativity, your ability to be creative. There are also studies that show that distractions lower IQ rather significantly. There's also this guy, Michael Posner from the University of Oregon, who's done studies that show that when you're focused on something and you get pulled away or distracted, it takes 23 minutes to get back to the same level of focus that you were at before you were distracted. There's much more where this came from. If you're interested in the flow state thing, you could get Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's book. I think it's called Flow. And then there's another great book by a phenomenal author, Johann Hari. It's called Stolen Focus, and that is just about the way that our attention is fragmented these days and how it's getting worse. Anyway, all that's just to say that, from what I've read and in my own personal experience, I've begun to realize that attention is everything. The quality of the attention that you can bring to any moment is really determinant of the quality of your life and your experience of wellness. Also, attention is a prerequisite for achieving anything, and constant interruption completely destroys attention. And that's what we are today. We're constantly interrupted and we are expected to be so. And I'm just not having it. I've been pretty intensely on this journey of cultivating real wellness and fulfillment in my life. Being in this circumstance of house arrest has really given me this opportunity to eliminate a lot of the superfluous things and really just hone in on my day-to-day life, my day-to-day routine and schedule, and build a day-to-day routine that is really fulfilling and moving me forward and closer to my goals and closer to just a lasting sense of peace and fulfillment. And I've really done well getting this dialed. I have a pretty solid routine that I pretty much consistently abide by now, and I love it. But when I sit and I think, okay, what else can I improve here? What are the things that are dragging me down the most, while I'm still in this kind of artificial container of this house arrest situation, and what can I do about them before this period of time is over? The one thing that overwhelmingly and just consistently nags at me is the distraction of my phone. It's funny because as I cultivate more focus and attention, I have a pretty serious mindfulness practice. I'm really interested in these flow states and really getting into these states of presence and focus where I can really, hone in on what's important, whether I'm alone and working on something or interacting with other people. As I become more and more sensitive to the quality of my own attention, it becomes more and more apparent just how insanely intrusive the phone is. So I'm gonna run this experiment where I just completely put it down for a week and just see what happens. Just see how I feel at the end of it. Now, when I say put the phone down, I don't mean like completely not use it. I'm obviously using it right now to film this video. I'm gonna keep using it to, listen to music or podcasts or audiobooks while I'm at work, but just the interaction part, any kind of social media, any kind of text messaging, any kind of phone calls, unless it's absolutely, has to happen. For example, if I'm at work and my manager calls me, I'm gonna put a special allowance so that call can come through because he sometimes calls and needs to find out what's going on in the warehouse and stuff, whatever. Stuff like that, obviously I still have to do that. But other than that, just completely drop it and completely forget about it and see what happens. Now, prior to this, for anybody who hasn't been following this channel, I did make this 90-day commitment where I did a few things, and one of them was a digital detox that I was gonna do. And I have been attempting to do that, right? Which I was going to cut down my phone and texting time and just sort of condense it into like a half an hour right when I get home from work. I was just going to get it all done there and ignore it the rest of the time. I have been attempting to do that, but the problem is that it really just bleeds outside of that half hour so easily, right? Like I feel like I need to respond to everybody, and I'll get to that half hour and there will be like 20 different texts or calls that I have to, get back to. And I'm like, okay, and I start, responding, get like halfway up the list. By the time I'm halfway done with the list, the people from earlier start to respond again, finally get through the rest of it, then I'm going back and re-responding, and then some conversations are being started, and So it bleeds out so quickly to the point where, I'll have intended to just spend this half hour on it, and it turns into like my entire evening is gone because I'm just responding to texts or getting back to people about things. So that didn't really work, and I don't want to spend my evenings that way. So I am gonna just completely eliminate it all for the next week and just again see what happens. It's so funny how insane that sounds to everybody, but to me from this point now I'm kind of just like it feels insane to me not to do that. At least not to do that sometimes. I mean, like, I think we all need to kind of think about this a little bit. Like, why does that sound so insane? When I was in high school, there was no such thing as the iPhone yet. Like we all lived with this forever without these phones in our pocket and these ways to constantly be attached to each other in these kind of superficial, artificial ways. And when I was in prison, I got to experience this return to a community of people who all did not have a phone, and it actually felt really wholesome in a lot of ways. And there was some magic there, the way that the community sort of was. And I was in prison, for goodness sake. And still, just the quality of the community was much stronger than I tend to encounter out here in the world. So that's the deal. Right now, it's Sunday, and I am gonna finish filming this video, and then I have a couple of phone obligations this evening, but after that it's gonna be zero of any of this until I see you guys next week. I'm actually super excited to see how this goes and see what happens, and I can't wait to share the experience with you. The song of the week this week is something a little different. I have a friend, Brian. He goes by Ickirus on YouTube, and he has been making these instrumental pieces and posting them that I'm finding super captivating. It's crazy. He plays the guitar, and then he kind of makes these things around him, and they're just these instrumental pieces, but they kind of just flow so well, and there's so much color in them. I don't know how he does it, because he doesn't actually, I don't think, has much technical music knowledge, but he somehow has this crazy ear that allows him to just find the most colorful things and put them together in these really cool little loops and instrumental pieces. One of them's called Swimming in a Thunderstorm. That one I'll link in the description. I'm gonna link another one in the description too. I think it's called Continue. Anyway, check it out. Go over there, subscribe, give him some love in the comments if you're interested. And with that, I'll see you guys next week. Hope you have a good one.